The Wests Tigers podcast is brought to you by the Wests Tigers Podcast Forum. Join the conversation today at weststigerspodcast.com.au.
It is the West Tigers podcast. We're up to episode number 447, streaming towards 450 episodes of the West Tigers podcast. And another post-victory edition, 44-16, the final score against the Cowboys at Leichhardt. A pretty memorable day at Leichhardt, I would suggest, to kick off season 2026. As you always do, we'll start with one word. We've got Declan, Jordan, and Josh with us tonight. And I'm going to go to Josh first for one word. I've got a small collection of one words, and we've got all the one-word submissions from the West Tigers podcast forum, so you can't steal any of those. Josh, what have you got?
My one word, Joel, is chiropractor, because the Tigers must have a great chiropractor because we have the best spine in the comp. So it was fantastic to watch yesterday. So, yeah, chiropractor.
Right. Okay.
That's why.
I didn't see that coming. Jordan, what's your one word?
PTSD. That period after halftime sort of kind of had me rocking back and forth, and I was thinking it was too good to be true, and we were gonna all that hope was dashed. But thankfully enough that it subsided by full time.
Mm-hmm. Okay, interesting one words. Declan, what do you got for us?
I'm gonna go Harlem Globetrotters because I think that was probably the best I've seen them attack. Like probably for I can't even remember. Maybe like this decade.
Yeah.
It's been pretty grim. Like some of those tries they were scoring, like just the way we moved the ball, the way we use our edges. Yeah, it was some Harlem Globetrotter stuff.
Well, I really like that point because that's something that I'd sort of had in the back of my mind, and that is my Saturday afternoon. I watched it on KO, and I'm sitting there thinking, the West Tigers just can't seem to change. From day one, it's been attack, attack, attack. And if we score more points, if we score 36 and they score 32, it's still a win. And it seems to be in our DNA because that's, again, the way that we played. And then the next game was Melbourne and St. George. And you could sort of just tell Melbourne just ground them into the ground. They're like the absolute polar opposite of the West Tigers. Josh, is that a good thing? Is that going to win us enough games this year, or do we have to become more methodical at times? Because I think, look, it was great to get the win, and it was a big win, but you're not going to win every week with that style.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's a bit of a reflection of how the footy is going this year. Like you talked about the Storm and the Dragons. The Dragons put 20 points on the Storm. Like, last year I think those two teams played and it was like 10-8 or something. There was 50 points scored in the Rabbitohs Roosters game. There was almost 50. There was 70 points scored on Thursday night in the Broncos and the Eels. I think it may be partly it's us, but we only let in 16 points. I think that's almost the lowest. And just, other than the Sharks and Penrith, that's the lowest score by a losing team all weekend. So perhaps our defence. Perhaps the game has changed and our defence wasn't as bad as it is. Because I think this year in the first few rounds we've seen, and will that continue? Maybe, maybe not. But first few weeks, I think we've seen just lots of points scored across the board. So I'm a little less worried about that until the season progresses a little more.
Yeah, I thought there was definitely that PTSD there for me in that second half where you sort of thought, is this enough of a lead? And this is going to be, this could potentially be an awful afternoon. But they found a way, which, you've got to say maybe that's a difference between West Tigers teams of old, where maybe they might have sort of started to get the yips and fallen into that trap, but they did do what they needed to do. I've got a stat for you, and it's a stat that I haven't seen anybody else mention anywhere. And I guess it's a slightly redundant stat. Declan, I'm going to throw it at you. But the West Tigers' last 10 competition games, so we're not talking about the trials, the West Tigers' last 10 competition games, how many of those games have we won?
4.
5.
5.
So, for a West Tigers team in the last 5 years to be at a 50% win ratio is a pretty unusual place to be. But the other one is, if we talk about the trials, Jordan, beat the Roosters, beat the Panthers, beat the Cowboys in round 2. Is that 3 in a row? Have we done it?
Well, I'm going to say by history of law from previous administration, we'll call it. I don't think it counts because there's a bye in the middle. Otherwise, this horrible cloud would be off my head a long time ago. No,
So we're at one in a row, are we?
we're one in a row. We'll leave
One
it
in a
at
row.
one in a row, and hopefully we'll make it two against South, and we can continue from there on out. But it's it's just good to start the season for us with a win. It's been, I think, the first time since 2020 we've won our round one game of such.
Yeah. My one word, I actually stole it from Adam Dewey. He said it in the post-match interview that he did on Fox. He used the word rusty. He thought we were rusty, and I thought in some ways that we were, which is hard to say given it was a comprehensive win. But I see room for improvement there, and that if that's your baseline, that's pretty encouraging. And the other word I've got to throw out there is happy. It's just so good to see West Tigers fans on the hill actually happy and having a good time. It's so fantastic to see. What about if we throw out there the Richo meter to get started? So the Richo meter, even though Richo's moved on from the club, we're still going to use the Richo meter. Awful, poor, average, good, or great. Josh, how would you rate that performance on the Richo meter?
On the Richo meter, I'd rate that performance great. First round,
Great.
well, first game for us coming off a bye, we put on 44 points. We let in less than 20. We dealt with an injury in the back line in the first 10 minutes, which, I've kind of looked at that before, and generally, and I know the six-man bench does change that a bit, but generally, if you do lose a back early, we especially have a history of losing lots of those games. So the fact we cope with that, it messed with the rotation. Appy had to play 75 when
Yep.
I think Sione Fainu went into a hooker. I think that was a great first up performance. But as you said, like it'll get better, but you expect to get better after your first game. So I think, great for me on the Richo meter.
Jordan, you can't go any higher than great. Are you at great?
Oh, I'm a good. I would have been at
Good.
good. We scored some great points. I love some of the attacking flair that we showed. There was good defensive resolve. The six-man bench, I'll easily put my hand up and said I was very critical of that rule change. I actually didn't like it at all. But after yesterday and then even watching or seeing parts of the Newcastle game earlier,
Yep.
it is actually a game changer, especially if you lose a spine player or an outside back. It makes all the difference, and I actually don't mind it. But yeah, good for me only because of that sort of kind of 10, 15-minute period after halftime where we sort of kind of just really dropped off.
Yeah, if that period is different, then yeah, absolutely. What about you, Declan?
Might cheat a little bit and say really, really good as
Really
opposed
good.
to
Somewhere in
great.
between.
Yeah, somewhere between good and really good because I thought, obviously the first half was amazing. The second half, I think, was a little bit disappointing, not because the Cowboys fought back, because momentum swings are just so inevitable, it feels like, in this season. And it just depends on like how well the team that's leading handles the momentum shift. So I'm not like kind of disappointed that they ended up scoring some tries because the Cowboys have some really good attacking players. The only disappointing thing was that we dropped some like pretty easy ball. Like we didn't finish our sets and make it harder for the Cowboys when they got possession. But other than that, I thought we were like really, really good, especially since that was our first hit out in 3 weeks. The Cowboys came off like a high intensity game against the Knights in Vegas. They had a whole week to recover. So they had like much more footy like under their belts coming into the game.
Yeah.
They also beat us this game last year. They beat us. And yeah, so I thought it was just some really good signs and like a lot to work on, but like a lot to build on. Probably more to build on, actually.
And I find it really ironic that somebody who works in the law has come up with a whole new definition. I don't think there's something between legal and illegal, but you've managed to find something between good and great. So, okay, that's fantastic. Appy, speaking of guilty or not guilty, Appy got $1,000 fine. He'll be right to play this week against South. Madden at Hope, of course, that six-man bench, they didn't get on and play. Our best player, though, or our best back, not our best player, but our best back was wearing the number 19 jersey, the game of Jeral Skelton. Josh, I heard some reports and saw someone posting on Facebook a couple of weeks ago how we should let Jeral Skelton go because there's no room for him in the West Tigers backline. I think that would be a grave mistake. He was fantastic.
He was sensational yesterday. Came off the bench. I mean, he did a lot of what he did most of last year too. He's big, he's strong, he runs
Yeah.
hard, takes off, he hits people hard. Is he perfect with his hands? No, but yesterday was, yeah. He started on the bench last week, and pending fitness of other guys, I would definitely have him over Luke Lally moving forward. But I thought Jeral was like, he came on after 15, he played 65 minutes and made 200 meters, and every time he got the ball though, he was busting tackles and
Yeah.
just sending guys, falling off him. So it was great.
221
Wow.
meters. It was fantastic given he only played, 65 minutes. He came on
Yeah.
at 15 minutes. Hopefully Stafford Toa back this week. That would be nice. We'll look a little bit more specifically at some of the other players in the backline. I think we might run through the one-word submissions from the West Tigers podcast forum. Have a rest for a second, guys. Andrew Blythe, he actually put his through on Facebook. Andrew said, overdue, the team and effort that we've all been waiting for. Barra said, relieved. This time of year, I feel somewhat hopeful, but this year feels different. I'm relieved that's the case. Mac Tiger, fitness. We were fitter than the Cowboys. This helped with support play and line speed. Tiger Stu's word was dominant. NatMac78 said enthusiasm. They showed plenty, especially in the first half. CQ Tiger smiling. They all played well, but were a bit rusty. West Tigers forever, nervous, up by 4 converted tries and still nervous and expecting to lose. Norsington, their word was Luai. His performance, a reminder of who he is. London Tigers, 8th wonder, a great win to kick off our season. Tiger Town SFS's one word was sufficient. Mercy Rule said realistic. The score inflated the difference between the sides. Our middle D was on the soft side for much of the game. Dirty Reds was promise, a lot of work to do, but the big win was a great sign. Mike's word was fan bloody tastic, which I think is 3 words. Teddy S said hungry. It's great to see. Peter A rising. The doco showed what's really happening in the change rooms, and I must mention I was slightly critical of the first couple of episodes of Rising, but the final couple of episodes were top notch. They were really, really good. So well done to the club on that. Tiger 70's word was excited. Can't wait for the next few games. Tigersman's word was improved. A well-deserved win, but nervous for next week. Lots and lots of one-word submissions. Actually, the last one was LFC Tiger points. We're going to see a lot of points this year, both ways. So there's the one there that really I thought we might mention, and that's fitness. Do we think, Jordan, that this team, like, they look more connected, they look happier, but do you think they're fitter? I think they are.
Yeah, the thing that annoyed me more about it was we didn't seem to be getting a lot of dominance in the ruck again.
Yeah.
But just Cowboys always seem to be getting in our face. But as the game went on, we saw the wrestle and the ruck start to change. And we were going, especially towards the back end of the first half, we definitely had the better fitness. We were still getting up there. The kick chases were awesome. A lot of the players were covering for each other. I thought Luai was amazing in his defense on the edge, and his communication, just especially working with our shuffle sideways. But yeah, fitness wise, I think a lot of the boys look fitter. Royce Hunt looks amazing. A lot of the guys, I was right in front of the bench players, and the amount of talk. There was probably the biggest difference I noticed from years gone by was all the bench players talking to each other. They were all having a chat. They were all up and about. There just seems to be a genuine connection in the group.
Mm. Is there something to be said, Declan? I kind of liken it a little bit to Penrith of a couple of years ago, or Penrith through that period, where you sort of saw that Cleary was coaching, but the senior players seem to have such a voice and be such leaders of the club during their really strong period. And I think that's kind of been copy pasted into West. Hey, half of them are the same players that we're talking about, but there's been a shift in the way that the team seems to operate, and I think that's paying dividends.
Yeah, I think it probably reflects that we've got a really senior spine. Bill is the only he's the least experienced player, but this is his 4th season going into rugby league. So he himself going into like for the West Tigers. So he himself is like kind of an experienced player as well, and it just looks like Adam Dewey, the same as last season when he moved to 7, just kind of brings that organisation. And not only that, it just looks like it frees up Luai just to kind of take control and like played his strengths, which then unlocks, like Samuel Afinu, like he looked amazing as well, getting him good early ball. And it just looked like the Cowboys just couldn't like keep up with Luai the entire time. There was so much good variation. Like he was like his short kicks were great, his short passing was great, his support play was great. So yeah, like although like Penrith, like I wouldn't say like it's exactly the same. I think we're just seeing the benefit of just having, for the first time in a really long time, just really experienced senior players who have played a lot of first grade. Because there's not, like, besides Luke Lilly and Macassini, everyone else has had a few seasons now of NRL. So with that comes more consistency, hopefully.
And there's a stability there. Normally in round 1 or round 2, first game of the year, when I update the website, I put the new players in, and there's 4 or 5 new players making their debut. There was one, Kai Pearce-Paul. So there's a fair bit of stability there. Josh, you mentioned Lily, and I wonder if, and we gave Benji big rap last week about, where he's at as a coach, but putting him and Macassini next to each other, I think was a little bit, where you've got on the other wing, you had obviously May to start with, but you had Skelton then, and you had Taruva, but you had 2 guys. I mean, Macassini's played 1 game of first grade. That was his 2nd game of first grade. And Lili's, who played a handful of first grade. I don't know if that's a combination that is necessarily our best combination when it comes to being inexperienced.
Yeah, I thought the Cowboys on their tries, 2 of them kind of exposed those 2 on that edge. They weren't quite lining up in the right kind of lines. Macassini was in a little bit too far, and that drove Luke in a little bit further. Luke's not the best defender to begin with. Hamasi is just big and strong, so he kind of can get away with it a little bit. But I thought that was challenging. I think against better teams, that'd be a bit worrying. Look, injuries aside, because obviously Toll was out and May went down. I wouldn't want to see that combination too often this year. I think Macassini's best position is on the wing, although it's going to be very competitive there. And I think Lily, that's like, he's had a few games. He does a lot right. He runs really hard. He gets himself to the right positions, but he drops a few balls, and his defense is kind of, he puts himself in bad positions, and he can't tackle very well. But with the ball, he runs really hard. So, and as you said, they're 18 and 19. Like, it's hard to have 2 kids playing next to each other in a first grade side. So yeah, it'd be interesting.
I'd rather see Macassini on the wing outside of Taruva. I think that'd be probably at least one side taken care of. Jordan, I wanted to ask you, it was referenced a little bit about a little bit of fragility at times in defence. I thought, especially around the ruck, even from the first set of 6 in defence, the Cowboys played plenty of metres. We're going to have to get, I know it was only our first real game of the season, and that should improve, but I was a little disappointed at the amount of metres that the Cowboys made at times, and we didn't control the ruck well enough.
Yeah, I don't know if that's more to do with our wrestle tactics, or if it's more to do that we're trying not to give away a lot of sets, like set restarts. Because I don't know, it seems to be no matter what referee we have, in every situation, we can get to play the ball. Like, you look at every game, play the ball speeds, they have the record on the NRL website. We are the slowest play the ball speed out of every team. And we just always seem to be that 1 or 2 seconds behind everybody else. And the referee was being very, very strict. Like we saw in the first half, like Cowboys were getting pinned a lot for it. So I don't know if it's more of a tactic, like trying to be tactical and not giving away set restarts. But yeah, it's definitely annoying especially when they've got a hooker like Marnie, who was taking advantage of us sort of kind of getting off too quick and our line not being set. So it'll be interesting to see if we can sort of kind of contain or control the ruck against a stronger team like, the Raiders or Storm or the Warriors at this point in time, and whether or not that's going to actually really bite us as the season goes on.
But yeah, I also just think it's what we talked about before, like just the way the game's being ref now with the 6 again, like beyond the 20, like it's the days of just being able to bash a team and to keep them in their own half for like like set after set. I think for most teams, like it's a really hard thing to do. Like I think Penrith are the only team that I can see that consistently still manage to keep teams like in their own half and beat them with that yardage. And like I don't know, like I feel like the Cowboys, although like they played bad and we did like they did give it to us and we did take it with all the opportunity with like the set restarts and stuff. Like they do have a good roster and like they can like move the ball well. So I wouldn't be like too harsh on us in terms of like the way they move the ball. Yes, there's like stuff to improve on, but I thought it was a pretty good header considering that we did kind of cave in the second half a little bit, but there was no like kind of obvious lapses and like missed tackles or anything like that for a team that especially didn't have their match fitness at the moment. So hopefully against Souths it's a bit more tighter because they'll have kind of that like the runs on the board.
Is it legs that still need some running in them with Jarome Buller, Josh? Because sometimes he's there and he's on and he's part of everything, and other times you wonder if he's out there. I know I'm being cruel, but he's inconsistent still.
And I expect you to say that, Joel. Oh, look, I think he had a really good first half. I think in the second half there were a couple of errors, but we were well up. He was trying to create something. He did create 2 tries. He did force 2 6 agains. I was kind of went back and watched it. He did kind of create 2 6 agains that we got. He did create a couple of tries. I think it's kind of like, and I saw someone mention this on the forums. It's kind of like the David Peachy effect. It's because he looks to me like, and I think it's kind of that style. He doesn't look like he's sprinting. I think the other thing is we have, yesterday we had 4 big wingers to charge the ball back. So that kind of means actually you don't want your slightly built fullback, charging through too much. Look, I think he dropped a couple of balls in the second half. I think, it was late in the second half. One was bad. There was one when he was, there were 2 when he was trying to get a pass away. That's not great, but it's early season. I thought he was better than a lot of other people did, and perhaps generally I do think that. But I think, he was better than he was in the trial. I think it's early season still, and he created a couple of tries, and we won by 20. So, I'm fairly happy with him still.
He'll warm up as the season goes on. He'll be there. His positional play will improve. What about? I've got to give Adam Dewey a pat on the back for defence. Made some really important tackles, and his defence has improved significantly, which is great to see. But Jarome Luai, Jordan, that was the best game that Luai has played in our colours.
100%. He stood up. He showed every single Tigers fan yesterday what exactly he can do for us. There were and it wasn't just what he did with the ball, it's what he did off the ball, as I mentioned earlier, with his talk in defence out wide. There was also there was a point where he dropped the ball, and then the very next time, he made a couple of tackles in a row and really got the guys up. And I can't remember who he hit, but he managed to hit someone and right under the ball and made him lose it, which was fantastic because it's that kind of thing. It's like, okay, I made a mistake. You go and make up for it, and he did. And then when we were really sort of kind of Cowboys had a bit of momentum, and he did that kick and he got it off the post and he scored. For me, that reined it back. Like Cowboys still had a little bit afterwards, but that was the one that really deflated their momentum, and it sort of kind of put us in another position just to sort of kind of keep going on with the game. So I think he really proved what he can do, and I think if he can contain that momentum and that sort of kind of composure, we will be in for a season that we won't forget for the time being.
Yeah, 100% well said. 21 offloads for the team, 32 missed tackles. The Cowboys made 46 missed tackles, or failed to make 46 tackles. Let's talk about the forwards. Alex Twal, he made 36 tackles, 14 runs for 119 metres, and I think it was, I haven't got the actual stat here. I thought I did, but the stat for offloads, Declan, he's channeling his inner guy from the Panthers, when it comes to that ball playing, getting the offload off, Twal's game has just gone to a whole other level.
Yeah, and he had a really nice short pass to Finu
Yeah.
that set up Luai for that nearly try that they bombed. So yeah, just like I love like little slight variations like that when someone is just like kind of like builds something like that into the game that they weren't like kind of known for before. But like Twal, he was kind of known as that like classic like kind of one-dimensional like work rate player that wasn't gonna like make a ton of meters, but was gonna make all his tackles. And slowly he got more efficient at running the ball, and then like a few more tackle breaks. And now it looks like Benji's kind of challenged him to like have that little bit of variety with his pass, which is really good as well. And I think it kind of shows you like when you have like a middle forward that can pass the ball, it just opens so much more up, which is why it'd be great if we had someone like Cameron Murray in our team, because I think that would just be like the final piece. But yeah, I think Twal was amazing. Like you can see why they wanted to re-sign him and like kind of keep him here, because it's clear that like he's obviously great off the field, but it seems like he's like continue to improve, and as a senior player as well, which I think is like great to see that he's getting better, even though he's not necessarily a younger player.
Yeah. A couple of years ago, he was heading towards Plodderville.
Oh, yeah. The shredder.
He was shredder. He was getting to be shredder worthy. But he's really turned his game around. And I've got to say also, like I said on the pod last week, I was a bit concerned about impact off the bench. But Sione, Fainu, Hunt, and Seyfarth all ran for an average of about 10 metres per run. I thought that the bench accounted for themselves quite well. What about Terrell May? So he made 18 runs, 155 metres, but only played 53 minutes. And Josh, I know it's early in the season, so maybe, and that was his first game he didn't play in the trial, but maybe that's the strategy moving forward, is to give him that shorter stint. I think it works better.
Yeah, I think he did 53 good minutes. As you said, it'll be interesting to see how that goes, because he was coming off the back injury too. I think he'd been, had some injections. But I thought the 53 minutes worked fine. He seemed to do just as much work in those 53 minutes. He looks a bit stronger and more size. I don't know, but maybe I just hadn't seen him for a while. But I felt it worked well for the rotations. It was a little bit weird because obviously Skelton came on early, and I think that threw a little bit of the forward rotations out. But I thought he played really well, having not played a trial. It was one of those things though where other guys had starring games. He kind of just did his job, but his job is 150 meters and 45 tackles. So it was as always very impressive.
Another thing I was really impressed with was the two edge back rowers, Jordan, Kai Pearce-Paul on the right, Samuela Fainu on the left. It's up there with one of the best, or potentially the best, back row combinations that we've had. I remember back to the days, I'm going to wrap him a little bit, but Blair and Ellis we had at one stage. I always thought that was going to be a good combo, but Kai Pearce-Paul, great first game, and Samuela, just another consistent performance, and he's reached his 50 first grade games.
Yeah, no, they looked sensational. Samuelo, every time he had the ball, he was dragging defenders with him, and so was Kai Pearce-Paul. The amazing thing for me was that I think it was Kai Pearce-Paul scored 3 tries in 44 games for the Knights, and he scored 2 for us in the opening first half. Yeah. No, they were sensational. The thing for me, the big difference for me with that second Pearce-Paul try was his positioning. Like he placed himself outside the centre, and it gave the winger no option. And for me, that is the kind of thing. It's not just what you can do with the ball; it's where you put yourself. And for back rowers, Britton Nickera is the best at the game at it. That running the line, putting yourself in that position. And he put himself there. He put himself in that spot. And same for his second try when he got the kick. He's put himself in that position to run through the gap, and either him or Sione could have scored. The forwards did a really, really good job. Just to mention on something you said about Twal, there was actually 2 points that really stood out for me on his game. There were twice where we were running sideways, and he just jumped in there and took one straight run up the guts just to straighten us up, set us back up again. And he did it twice. And for me, and it was deliberate. It was intentional. He could tell that we were going sideways. And then the other point was there was a point in the game where it was just him
Appy and Luai in a little bit of a huddle, having a chat with each other. And it shows that he's really developed into sort of kind of that senior role, that leading player.
Yeah.
But yeah, the forwards are great. And the edge back rowers, I'm excited to see what those two can develop over the year, because they're big, they're strong, they're athletic, and it can be a real threat to any team. You got good back rowers, it can make all the difference.
Yeah, absolutely vital positions in today's game. Samuela, 15 runs, 147 metres. KPP, 12 runs, 140 metres. We spoke a lot about the lethal left edge last year, Declan, and over the off-season. But Kai Pearce-Paul on that right edge, albeit there was some disruption, but it looked the more dangerous with Dewey there as well. Like it's not just threats on the left now, it's threats on the right.
Yeah, and a little bit different as well. Like, I feel like the right edge was like a little bit more direct with, like, especially the first like Kai Pearce-Paul try. Dewey went to the line, like block play to Buller, and then KPP hits the line, but then Luai kind of like shifted like a little bit sideways, like dropped Fainu under a few times. He managed to score. So yeah, a little bit of variety, which I think is really, really good. But I just can't believe just how much bigger Samuel is getting every single season. He looks a little bit like Olaquata now from Manly, and and he's still so young, but he's just got so much like raw potential in terms of his running and like so much X factor. And I thought that KPP, like, he was really good at attack, but I thought his kind of gritty yardage as well, coming out of trouble, was great. Like, he managed to like get post contact meters, quick play the balls, and his defense was really, really good, especially when the Cowboys had some ascendancy. Like, that right edge, even when like the play the ball was really quick, like, he made a lot of smart decisions that kind of tightened things up. And as opposed to like when last year, like, we just didn't really have someone on that kind of edge who could like, tighten us up that way. So it's just really good to see. So I was telling you before, like off air, like it might just be like another kind of Terrell May level signing with Kai Pearce-Paul. We'll just kind of nip someone from another system who just turns into a star because he's given more opportunity.
Yeah, well, fingers crossed. Like Josh, you always looked, physically a threat with when at Newcastle, but just underutilized. I think there's a player there, and if we can unlock him, I think it changes a lot of the dynamics of this team.
Well, I mean, it's been a bad weekend if you're Adam O'Brien, because KPP looked a whole different player playing for the Tigers, and then the Knights actually scored points. So, it's a whole thing. But KPP, he was like, I think, as we said, those two back rows on either side, like, that's now like, it's threatening to any team. They're big, strong, tall guys. They were pushing through. They were breaking tackles. They were just monstering people in defence. It's very exciting on those edges with those two.
100%. So what would we say if we zoomed out a little bit and looked at the performance, Jordan? What would you say would be the area that we would need to improve on? I mean, the Souths game is going to be a very and vastly different game to the game against the Cowboys. What do you think they should be focusing on this week?
Consistency. Just the one thing I noticed, we didn't find the ground as much as we did in the trials with our kicks.
Yep.
Like, there were quite a few times Cowboys were starting their sets on their 30 or 40 meter line, which better teams will punish you severely for that. You can't give that kind of field position away. I think we need to try and get our kicks away either a little bit earlier, or definitely try to move the fullback and wingers around. That was probably the only gripe I had with our halves, was just that we weren't finding the ground like Jock Madden did in that trial.
Yeah.
But we need to keep the consistency in defence. We can't have that kind of lapse. Like, I know we had a lot of points on them, but yeah, it's hard enough winning the game twice. You win it once and you try to win it again, especially if you get a team with momentum. We've got to keep the consistency in defence. We can't have that lapse again after halftime.
Declan, I'm sure you watched the Souths and the Roosters game.
I actually didn't. I was on boyfriend duties, but I saw the score.
There's something about that game that we'll talk about in a minute. We'll put a West Tigers flag around it. But you know what Souths bring. Cody Walker, Latrell Mitchell. What do you think we need to improve on to be competitive against a team that's traditionally A, good against us, but B, an effective football team?
Yeah, look, it's going to be another step up. I feel like if we win this game,
it's kind of like, oh, all systems go about potentially making the top 8 because they're one of those teams that's probably going to play finals footy. I'm not too concerned about all. I feel like we have the ability to defend all their team except Latrell Mitchell. I'm a little bit worried about whoever plays right centre for us. It's probably going to be a mismatch with Latrell. Like Fafita, I think that Kai Pearce-Paul, like he's a good defender. I think that'll be fine. But I think the Latrell matchup with one of our centres is the one that I'm a little bit worried about. So I kind of do hope that Starford is ready to go because like he's like, although he's like, you know, we have our gripes with him, like he has kind of an experienced player who's like played Latrell before. And then I feel like if we just, like I didn't watch the Roosters game for the Bunnies, but I thought that when they played the Dolphins, it was a bit free-flowing. So I think defensively, I think the Bunnies can be a little bit vulnerable because there was a bit of a points fest when they played the Dolphins. So I feel like if it's that kind of game, that would suit us as well. If we can just like keep the trail quiet, I think we've got enough firepower to beat them. But I think it's gonna be a really close game, and like even if we lose, I won't be disappointed as long as we play well. I think it's the key thing.
It has been the game, Josh, that West Tigers would traditionally lose. Like we fans' expectations are up, but I think it's an important game for the team to at least be really, really competitive in. We can't afford to drop the ball here.
I mean, firstly, I absolutely hate South, so it's always a game that we should win. I think, as you said, we've got that first win out of the way. Souths have been a bit inconsistent. Hopefully, they've had a big week for that Roosters game and the Alex Johnson piece, and like right up for that. I'm kind of glad it happened on Friday night, and he isn't even with the record coming into our game, and they're all up for it. Look, I think the things that concern me coming next week are the outside backs. You know, mainly just around who's actually fit, and some of those things we've talked about. Like we had 4 wingers, and if they're the only ones fit, it's kind of something you can do when you're on top in a game, but it's a bit of a struggle when you're coming in fresh to a game. The other thing that I was concerned about is kind of that 20 minutes after half time, and I think. For me, a bit of that's got to do with Royce Hunt. He was better. He ran hard, but he was on the field for 30-something minutes. He made 6 tackles. He missed 2. He gave away 2 cheap penalties. I'd probably have Bunty on the bench over him. But it's the outside backs, as I think Declan mentioned about Latrell. Like it's a strength for Souths. It's a concern for us. So.
I've written down Bunty Afoa just before you mentioned him, asking whether you think he'll get a run. What about Patrick Herbert? Does Patrick Herbert come in on one of the wings potentially, do you think? Declan's not looking very enthusiastic about that prospect.
Yeah, like, I don't know, like Herbert, like I wasn't like I think he did like pretty well in the trial, but I remember there was I can't remember, I think it was Jenkins, he just completely missed on a one-on-one tackle, and like although I don't like that. To be honest, but yeah.
I'd have him over Luke Lally if it came down to it. Like
I'm just about calling up David Nofaluma to get a run instead of Luke Lally. I'm sorry to say. I know I'm harsh, but not the world's biggest fan, as I seem to be saying on every podcast about poor old Luke. What about this as a question, right? So I'm sure that Jordan saw the Souths and the Roosters game. Josh did. If not, we've seen the news reports. The crowd came running out onto the field when something happened. Yeah?
Yep.
So what would be the West Tigers thing that would have to happen for the crowd to react like that?
Make the top 8.
Make the top 8? What's going to happen when we do eventually make the top 8, do you think?
I'll cry. I'll bust out crying probably.
It would be great to storm the field if they make the top 8. We should have done that when Twal scored.
Yeah.
That's a fair question. What would be our moment to? It has to be the top 8. Top 8's the only thing I can really think of.
I think you're going to do a pitch invasion when the West Tigers win 3 in a row.
I'll have to start a GoFundMe for the field fine, but maybe I'll just run up and down the first aisle and just cheer.
Probably a good idea. Yeah. No, the celebrations of the West Tigers making the 8 and getting 15, at least 15 years off our backs will be pretty epic like that, I think. So yeah, something to look forward to. Hopefully a little later this year would be nice. Last point, the last thing that was sort of was on the agenda was, I don't know if you guys, obviously it was a sellout at Leichhardt, great crowd, 17,600 odd. But did you see the plans? They're not going to put a roof on that northern grandstand. The original plans that came out had the roof there, but by the look of it, the money's not going to stretch that far. Are we overly disappointed by that, Josh? Does it matter too much? I mean, there's not a lot of undercover at Leichhardt. It would have been nice to have.
It would have, but on the days where it's pouring down rain, maybe you're probably not feeling that extra stand anyway, and there's people on the hill and kind of thing. You're mainly using the main stand. The sun doesn't really shine like the sun's coming in from the side, so the roof wasn't making much difference. And you got the trees above you anyway, up that end. So look, I think if anything had to go, that roof is probably the one, and I understand they've kind of left it able to be added later, although that obviously requires more cash. Yeah, look, I'm just happy for it. I'd be just happy if they put some more staff on, so you could actually buy a beer within 30 minutes. That who needs a roof? Just a beer would be good. So
right.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Or run out of bottled water.
Yep.
They run out of bottled water by half time. That was insane.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. Well, feedback for the club for sure. Only 2 more games at Leichhardt, and then I think it's going to be redeveloped after this season. Is that?
That's correct. Yeah, we don't play there next year, so they're planning. The plan, if it all gets approved, is that the construction is meant to commence sort of kind of September, October this year.
Right. Okay.
Could we burn the old one down if we win the comp? If it's September, October.
That's such a Parramatta thing to do.
Yeah.
All right, guys, thank you very much. And as always, for everybody, thanks for listening, and leave your comments and questions and things on the West Tigers podcast forum. And we'll come back to another pod midweek after the team is named for the game against South at Gosford. Thanks a lot, guys.
All right, thank you,
boys.
boys.
Thank you, everyone.